Good evening, Blanco Panthers. My name is Clay Rosenbaum. I am the superintendent of schools for the Blanco Independent School District. I want to take a moment to share our return to school plan with you, hopefully be able to answer any questions that you have and then give you an idea of how you can get any other questions answered at the end. We want to make sure that you have all of the information you need to make a choice for your child. So as most of you know, I tried to host a town hall meeting last night. It was interrupted because we were hacked into by an intruder. So we ended up having to cut the meeting short. What I want you to know about that is that the intruder did not compromise our system, did not get any personal information, or get into our network. The intruder just simply hacked into the Zoom meeting, did not even have access to my computer. So, anyway, with that being said, I want to thank you for the opportunity to go over this with you. Thank you for your patience as we've worked through this plan. I know that we've changed some things as we have worked through it, and I appreciate everybody's understanding and patience as we have done this. Since this is going to be a video, a little different than the way we had planned, um, I'm going to do my best to move through this so that it's not too lengthy, but still be able to give you the information that you need. So I'm going to just get right into this. Just quickly, as you know, decisions about school are always difficult. They become even more difficult in times like these. So these are decisions that are made uh, with the input of several people. Our leadership team has been instrumental because they've been here all summer. We did have a meeting in July where we brought in some other staff members. We brought in some parents, received input, made some edits to this plan. So we feel like we have a great plan going forward. This plan does encompass what we have been working on throughout the year. It's also based on the best available information that we have. Information changes on us. Uh, we get guidelines from the state, from the Texas Education Agency, and from our Commissioner of Education, and those guidelines have changed. There was one point in the summer when we weren't real sure if we were going to be able to come back to school at all, and then we found out that we had to come back to school in person, and that has even changed. Now we can do in person and we can do remote learning. So we've had a couple of changes to our schedule. We will now start school with students on Monday, August 24th. That gives us 2 full weeks with our staff to be able to have whatever staff development training that we need so that we're completely prepared, for all of those safety precautions for being able to offer online instruction. It just gives us plenty of time to make sure that we are ready to go for, whenever those students are prepared. You will be given the option to have your student come back in person just as normal, or you can keep your student at home, your child at home, and we will educate them through an online system. Please note, though, that this will look very different than it did in the spring, and I'll go through that a little bit more as we go. So again, you're gonna get the choice. You will receive a commitment form to fill out to tell us whether or not you will send your child back in person or whether you'll keep them at home. That will allow us to start making further plans about master schedules, know how many students are going to be in each classroom, possibly riding a bus. Gives us all of the information we need to be able to get started. So some of this I'm going to go through quickly just because it's not necessarily pertinent to you being able to make a decision, but I will get to all of this. So there are 4 practices that Blanco ISD will do, and we will provide notice to parents, implement practices to prevent the virus from entering the school. We will respond when it does enter the school, and we will implement preventative practices to reduce the likelihood that an outbreak occurs on campus. I will discuss exposure in a little bit later, in a little bit in a different section. Phases and timelines, as you can see, we've been planning since May, but the guidelines have changed on us. So Specific district health and safety measures, these are probably the most important pieces for you as a parent. Just again, I want to make sure that you understand this is based on current information that we have in the current guidelines that we are given from our local health authorities and from our state agency, from the Texas Education Agency and from our Commissioner of Education. So screening. We will screen our staff every day, and we will screen students every day. Want to make sure that you understand that it will be a self-screen. We're going to ask all of our staff members to go over the symptom each day, the symptoms of COVID-19 each day. If they have any symptoms, then we ask them to stay at home. Same with the students. We will also do a temperature check. We're asking parents and guardians to do the same and self-screen or to screen your students. Please do not bring them to school if they are showing any symptoms of COVID-19. The symptoms I'll discuss in a few minutes. We will also take all of our students' temperature when they arrive at school. We will do that as long as we possibly can or until the situation warrants us not needing to do that anymore. Teachers will monitor students and refer them to the nurse or to the designated person on each campus if there are symptoms or if there are any concerns. Face coverings. This is strictly about trying to remain safe, trying to keep ourselves safe and those around us. We are going to require that masks be worn by all of our students in grades 3 through 12. Uh, for grades pre-K to 2, that will be the parents' option. Uh, Masks could include disposable face masks, cloth face coverings as well. The students that might have individual needs will be addressed on a case-by-case basis. Please, if you have any needs that need to be addressed, contact the campus that your child is on so that we can make sure we make whatever accommodations that need to be made for your child. Also, we ask that each individual be responsible for providing their own mask. We do have some disposable masks. We have some cloth masks. We will provide some if need be. So isolation. When a student has displayed symptoms, a staff member will provide an assessment to determine if the student needs to be sent home. We ask that if they need to be sent home, that the parents or guardian, that we pick them up within 30 minutes to an hour of the time we call. We know that may not be possible, but we just ask that you do your very best. If you can't meet us in that timeline, we will take care of your child, but we do ask that you get there as soon as possible. The quicker that we can get a student off campus that has symptoms, then the better chance we have of mitigating the spread of that. If there is a presumptive or positive case on campus, other students will be removed from the classroom and taken to an alternative location on campus. The reason we do that is if we think there's something, a symptomatic child in a classroom, we get them out of there and we clean that classroom. We make sure that we remove that child or that we get them isolated away from others so that we prevent the spread of that. District communication will be provided to staff and parents of the students who came into contact with a COVID positive student or staff member based on CDC guidance. We are given some guidance about notifying if we do have a positive case on our campus. We will notify all parents on that campus. If we just have an exposure that we are investigating that might be maybe in a classroom, it could be a situation where we only notify the people in that classroom. Please understand that this is very new to us. These protocols are all new to us. We have dealt with a few of them this summer, but not to the extent that we will when school gets started. But we will notify those that we need to notify, and we will do our best to isolate any student that might have symptoms and follow up with proper cleaning practices. Staff members displaying symptoms will follow district protocols, including isolation from students and other staff members. Very much the same as we would with a student. If we believe they have symptoms, we need to isolate them, clean that room, take care of any kind of issue that might surround cleaning and trying to prevent that from spreading. The Family First Coronavirus Response Act provides leave support for staff. There's a section towards the end. You're more than welcome to look at that. We will review that with our staff, make sure they completely understand that they are provided extra leave in this particular situation. It's called COVID-19, COVID Response Act. Students or staff who come into close contact with a positive individual will be asked to self quarantine for 14 days. Doesn't necessarily mean that they have the virus, but if they come into close contact, I will define close contact in a few minutes. This may be one of the biggest challenges for us is to determine how close or what kind of exposure that a person had to another person. There's so many levels to this. It could be somebody is exposed to a person that was exposed. We will have to ask a lot of questions. We may have to call family members and ask if they've had any symptoms, but we will do what we can to isolate any student and to do what we can to keep our students and our staff safe. Transportation, we will continue to provide bus transportation. We do encourage parents that if it's at all possible, please bring your child to school and pick them up. We know that getting on in a vehicle like a bus um, could cause exposure to increase. There will be hand sanitizer as they enter the bus, and they will be required to wear a mask when they enter that bus. They need to have a mask on. We will have assigned seating so we know exactly which student was sitting where and all of the students that might be in the surrounding area. We asked, or part of the seating arrangement will be to sit children with others from the same household, if at all possible. When we can, we will leave the windows open on the bus for better circulation. All surfaces will be cleaned. Bus drivers will wear masks at all times, and they will self-check and take a temperature check in the morning each time prior to uh, transporting students on a bus. Cafeteria and meal periods, this may look a little different from each campus to the other. If you still have questions at the end, we're going to ask that you contact your campus. Our campuses are different sizes, different numbers of students. They operate in a different way. But something that is important is that parents are not allowed to deliver lunches to their student at school until further notice. We have to limit the number or the amount of people that enter our buildings on a daily basis. Students may bring their own meals or be served individually plated meals and we space throughout the cafeteria. Campuses may have students eat lunch at their desk or breakfast. Um, so likely in the elementary school, there'll be some classrooms that eat in the classroom. Might not be possible at the other campuses. For further information on this, if you need more information about how the meal periods will look, you can contact the campus. But understand that whether they're in the cafeteria, in the gym, in the classroom, we will be making sure that they're spaced out enough to keep them safe and to mitigate the spread of the virus. Cafeterias, classroom, and other outdoor areas may be utilized. No parents or visitors allowed during lunch at this time. And then their face coverings may be removed while actively eating. Also, depending on the campus, depending on the time, the lunch periods, classes may go to lunch on a staggered schedule to minimize the number of students in the cafeteria. Hand washing and hand sanitizing. We will have hand sanitizer available all over the campuses, at the entrances, and anywhere they need in all of the classrooms. Students and staff will be expected to wash or sanitize their hands regularly. We will do some training with all of our students to make sure they understand the proper way to wash their hands. Campus visitors, we will limit normal visitation to our campuses at this time. All individuals entering the building, we know that there may be a situation where you have to come up, maybe deliver some paperwork, maybe even pick up a child. That if you do enter the building, you need to wear a face mask. Campuses will utilize virtual meeting options as much as possible. Um, we will not allow visitors to go beyond the reception area. Now, we will use volunteers. They will be screened. We will have extensive training with our volunteers as well, but we will only take adult volunteers. Like I said, all volunteers will be screened and we'll have a temperature check prior to entering the building. Water fountains, we're going to limit the use of our water fountains. We ask students to bring reusable water bottles if possible. Water fountains will be used as fill stations. Spacing in the classroom, when we can, we'll space our students out 6 feet apart. If we cannot, then the guidelines tell us that there needs to be more sanitizing of the classroom, more frequent sanitizing of the classroom, and more hand washing for those students in there. That is one of the important pieces of you completing the commitment form, is so that we know exactly how many students we will have in the classroom. Um, Once we know that, then we'll know how we can space our students out. But we will do everything that we can to keep them 6 feet apart, but it may not be possible in many cases. We will use outdoor spaces for learning as much as possible. And whenever possible, we'll maintain consistent groupings of students to try to prevent the spread of the virus. As you know, that's a little bit easier at an elementary campus versus the secondary campuses. And so that may be, if you have a question about that, that may be a question that you need to get answered at that campus, because the campuses will define all of these procedures a little bit more based on their situation. Arrival procedures, again, like I said, we ask that parents, if at all possible, you bring your child to school and you pick them up at the end of the day. Early bird arrivals are strongly discouraged. Please do not drop off prior to 7:30 at the elementary school and the middle school. You will not be allowed in the building, and will need to remain in the vehicle at least until that time. You know, high school is a little different. Students tend to stay in their cars. We will use separate entrances where possible. In some cases, there are only a couple of entrances. The elementary has quite a few more, so you'll get more information about that from the campuses. Parents will not be allowed to walk their children to the classrooms. I know, especially at the elementary school, that's a common practice. We cannot allow that this year. I apologize to the parents. I know that that's important to you, but uh, for us to be able to control the environment, we're going to only be able to allow our students into those buildings. Campus specific bus procedures will be developed and they will be shared with you. Like I said, each campus is different, so some of these protocols may be a little different for each campus. Dismissal procedures, if we can, we'll do staggered dismissal. Um, Staggering the times and group of walkers, car riders, bus riders can help manage student movement. We'll do the best we can, and separate exits will be utilized when possible, just like in the mornings when students arrive. And then early pickup is discouraged within 1 hour of dismissal. We know there are times when you're going to have to get your student before the end of the day. We completely understand those situations. Movement in the building, this is a very important piece, and we know it's going to look different from one campus to another. We're going to do our best to have one-way traffic patterns. Walking pathways will be state of the right. This includes entrance and exit doors. We're going to encourage our kids to socially distance at all times. That's very difficult with students, but we're going to do our best. You can reiterate with your child to keep their distance from everybody, even when wearing a mask. The mask helps mitigate that if they're not within 6 feet, but it's always best to just take all necessary precautions. When possible, teachers will move to students for transitions. That might work at the elementary, and if we are able to do that, your campus will notify you of that. One piece that I failed to mention when I talked about our changing our start date to August the 24th, we also added 10 minutes to the school day. We did that for several reasons. We know that it's going to be a little slower in the mornings because of taking temperatures and those kind of things. Um, it also allows us to have longer uh, passing periods on our secondary campuses. That way, we may have a small group of students in the hallway for a couple of minutes, and then we release a couple of more. It just gives that extra 10 minutes gives us some flexibility throughout the day. Recess, PE, and specials. Staggered scheduling and creative recess areas will be utilized to promote daily recess. Campuses may consider limiting the number of students per recess group. Again, that's going to depend on the number of kids that we have that come to school in person. Once we know those things, we'll be able to define these precautions a little bit more. Brain breaks will be implemented as needed. Mask breaks will be implemented. We're going to count on our teachers. They're very professional in what they do. They understand um, this situation and the need for safety. So they will be very strategic about taking mask breaks. It's difficult to wear a mask all day long, and we know that. But we're going to count on our staff and their professionalism on that. PE classes will be conducted outdoors whenever possible. Um, if the students do art, they will use their own art supplies. We won't share art supplies. Music and PE equipment will be sanitized and wiped down. Um, and again, classroom or outdoors, we'll utilize those as much as possible. Protocols for cleaning and disinfecting. We're going to limit the number, the shared supplies, like I mentioned before. Protocols will be established for cleaning classrooms throughout the day. Uh, we know how important the cleaning is. It's going to be an all hands on board with cleaning. It could be, our staff wiping things down, maybe our teachers, obviously our custodians. Could be anybody maybe disinfecting throughout the day. Cafeteria will be disinfected. Employee and student screening protocols. We will, to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 and to reduce exposure, we will be requiring employees and students to complete a self-screening. It includes looking for these symptoms that are listed here. We know that as each day goes by, we'll get better at identifying these. Uh, all screening information will be kept confidential. We do have some restrictions about who we are able to notify about a case that might be a positive case of COVID-19. Teachers and staff must report if they have symptoms or are lab confirmed. If they do, they must remain off campus until they meet the criteria for reentry. We will go over those situations with our staff. They will be trained. They will know what to do if they have symptoms, if they've been tested positive, or if a situation comes up in a classroom where they find out about a kid that may have the symptoms or has been tested positive. So we will have extensive training on the signs to look for and how to handle each situation. Um, Same thing, health protocol. If an employee becomes ill and is exhibiting symptoms, they may be asked to leave work or go to the nearest health center. Each situation is going to be different. We will just work through those as they come up. Those that are returning to work from an approved medical leave will need to contact our HR department. Like I mentioned before, we will train our staff on all of those situations. Tested positive or suspected with COVID-19. The individuals or themselves who are lab confirmed or experience the symptoms must stay home throughout the infection period. Below are the conditions for reentry. They have at least 3 days have passed since recovery with no fever or without the use of fever reducing medications, and um, improved respiratory symptoms, no cough, shortness of breath, and at least 10 days have passed since symptoms first occurred. If you have symptoms, it could be, and do not get evaluated by a medical professional, is assumed that that person does have the symptoms of COVID-19. We will notify the health department if we do have a case. We will close off an area, make sure that there's deep cleaning, and we will send notifications to those that we need to send notification to. Guidance if exposed. While we hope that we avoid it, we need to be prepared. So if you or someone have been in contact, here's some things that you can do. Quarantine yourself. Um, Contact the following. This is really probably more for our staff. We want to make sure that the healthcare provider is notified, supervisor, and then our HR department. Supervisors will work with our HR department on any teacher that might be uh, considered symptomatic. We recommend that student, teachers, staff, or visitors stay at home through the 14-day incubation period. We also know that this is going to be a challenge, and so we will work through these. Uh, there's there are always different scenarios, and we will have to investigate these. I think I mentioned this earlier. A positive case seems to be very easy, but exposure is a little bit different. Social distancing, as you know, wearing a mask and social distancing seem to be our most effective ways of preventing the spread of the virus. Some things we'll do, traffic flow, I talked about that. Maybe having one-way hallways or state of the right guidelines. Classrooms, I talked about that. We'll do our best to have uh, students 6 feet from each other. Cafeteria lunch, I talked a little bit about that, and we will minimize any kind of interactions or gatherings that we have. Close contact, this definition changed yesterday. The document refers to close contact with an individual who is lab confirmed. So close contact is determined by an appropriate public health agency. We received this information yesterday. Like I said, close contact is defined as being directly exposed to infectious secretions, being coughed on, regardless of whether you have a mask or not. Someone coughs on you, then you would be considered to be exposed. Being within 6 feet for a cumulative duration of 15 minutes. However, additional factors like case contact masking, uh, ventilation, presence of dividers, and case symptomology may affect this determination. This is one of those pieces that we'll have to uh, ask a lot of questions to determine if we feel like somebody was in close contact to someone that had symptoms. So we will have to ask a lot of questions. May have to ask maybe students that were around, maybe even talk to parents about who have they come in contact with to make a determination. We will do this. There are several of us that will put our heads together and come up with the best possible solution. If we're not real sure, we will err on the side of caution and send either a student or a staff member home. Personal protective equipment, we talked about masks. Not going to spend much more time on that. We do know how important masks are. We are going to require those. Staff and students will be required to wear a mask, and that is for students that are in grades 3 through 12. The other grades will be up to the parent. Gloves, we will have gloves. We're not going to require gloves, but gloves are a great personal protective measure. Some of this I'm going to skip through a little bit quicker. When possible, teachers and students are not going to visit other classrooms. I talked about that earlier. We're going to try to stay separated as much as possible. If we do have to share a workspace, we want to make sure that we are cleaning it on a regular basis. That could be in the classroom or even in some of the common areas. Uh, if students are in the classroom for a couple of hours at a time, there needs to be some cleaning happening during that time. There will be limited access to certain workspaces. We don't know the capacity. We will know a little bit more about the number of students after we receive the commitment forms back from parents. But there may be some areas that we may not be able to have students or teachers in based on the size. Conference rooms, we do have conference rooms, but we will limit the people that enter and exit those conference rooms so that we don't have an outbreak in there. Same with our teachers' lounge. These spaces will be used, but there's different things that we might do. We don't want to share certain things like coffee machines, microwaves. We'll have to do some cleanings, but we'll work with our staff on that. Same with the copy room. We need to limit the amount of staff that are in the copy room at any particular given time. Facilities cleaning. This is important. We know that we're going to have to continue to clean throughout the day. Um, we do have some categories set up and how often they should be clean. I'll let you read through those. We will send you this plan along with this video. You see on here this says draft on it. Uh, we may change this based on some of the questions that we get. A deep cleaning and disinfection protocol. When we feel like there has been a positive case or a student or staff that's been symptomatic and they've been in a certain area, we will do a very deep cleaning of that um, area. That means basically touching every inch of that room, any object or manipulative that might be in that classroom. Food delivery, uh, bringing or sharing refreshments during meetings. If we have meetings, we're going to ask not to do that. Again, I want to just mention that parents are not allowed to deliver lunches to their student at school until further notice. If for some reason a student does not have a lunch, we will make sure that they get one. Practices to mitigate the likelihood of the spread inside the school. We'll have hand sanitizer, we'll wash hands. Many of the things that I've talked about, we will use touchless thermometers to screen. Um, Anybody that comes in will have a mask on. We encourage everyone to wash their hands more frequently. And number 5 talks about masks again. Students and teacher groupings where feasible. We'll encourage students to practice social distancing. This is kind of a repetitive of keeping our desks 6 feet apart. We do have lots of safety supplies. We've ordered lots of PPEs. Some things are on back order, but we've ordered uh, lots of supplies to help us manage the situation and clean to the best of our ability. Bus driver, we've talked about that. These are for our bus drivers. They'll go through the same protocol if they're sick. We will take their temperature, and those buses will be cleaned and disinfected before and after each particular route. Again, I want to mention parents are encouraged to bring students to school if at all possible. Uh, Protocol: if an employee or student becomes ill, we will immediately report to an isolation room. We will isolate that person. We'll do it as discreetly as we possibly can, and we will follow certain protocols. We'll call the local health authority. We'll wear masks and gloves when we're dealing with this particular person. We will give them directions on what to do. Restrooms, we know that the restrooms will be utilized. We're just going to do our best to limit the number of people that are in them. Each campus, I know, has had the conversation about this, and they will be getting you more information about that, or if you have questions about that, just know that we're going to do our best to limit the number of students that go into a restroom at any particular time. Same in the locker rooms. We expect our students to continue to socially distance in our locker rooms. Social and emotional well-being, that is important to us. Any situation, any student, parent needs help, does not matter if it's in person or whether it is a remote learner. We will support and do whatever we can to support the needs of all of our students and staff. Staff and student training, there will be so much training for our staff and our students on the first few days, how to wash hands, protocols. We will do lots of training. We will do training on the cleaning protocols, all of our safety protocols at each campus. Our campuses will spend time with our staff. That's why we have 2 weeks now to make sure that we go through all of the different scenarios. We practice as much as we possibly can. So there will be lots of training. Communication, we will continue to communicate as much as possible through email. You can visit our district or campus's websites. We do a lot through e-notes. We have social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We do have a Blanco ISD app, Schoolology, and Google Classroom. I need to mention Google Classroom are platforms that we will use, and you will see those. I mentioned this earlier about the BISD employee rights and sick leave. You're welcome to take a look at this. They are provided with some extra days because of the COVID-19 situation if they are quarantined because of COVID-19. The general information about the instruction, as you know, in the spring, uh, we did not necessarily take grades. We did not take attendance. We did not have to. That was a quick turnaround. We had about 4 or 5 days to prepare for that. The guidelines are very different for the fall. When our students come back in person, um, they will be treated the same as those that are remote learners as far as attendance and grading goes. I'll get into a little bit more of this. We are required to follow the curriculum, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, the TEKS. Uh, we did not have to do that in the spring. We will move forward just as if everybody was in school. So the learning that takes place remotely will be very, very similar to the instruction that takes place for those that are in person. If there's an assignment that is given to those students in person, the student that is um, in the remote learning setting will be required to uh, complete the same assignment in the same amount of time. Um, we will use a platform called Schoology. We also have Google Classroom. We will use both of those, especially Google Classroom. At the beginning, our staff is very familiar with that, and at some point, we'll make a transition to Schoology. These are platforms that support the the learning from home to school. As you can see, um, this is an integrated learning management system. It provides for us. It provides course management, mobile learning. It enables our students, parents, and teachers to engage with learning materials, um, whether they are at home or at school. Students can digitally submit homework assignments. They can review grades, participate in interactive discussions. We will have some training for our students and for our parents so that you know how to utilize these programs once we get them up and running. Um, so there will be lots of training on this for our staff over the next couple of weeks. Uh, there will be, I mentioned this, lots of professional development. Although we do have to be prepared for all of our safety protocols, we also have to be prepared for the instructional aspect of coming back to school. Um, we will optimize our instruction. We will gather data to see maybe what deficiencies our students might have based on the amount of time that we have not had our students in school. We will work to close any kind of instructional gaps that there are. We will optimize our facility safety and security. We will use all available resources. Parent commitment, again, I'm going to mention this another time. We will ask for a commitment from you, and you'll see that um, when you get shortly after you get this video, and there are some instructions in that commitment form. Electives, there are some elective courses that may not uh, be able to be utilized from home. Good example is a welding course. If a student is taking a welding course, there may be times when they have to come up to the school to do some kind of skills assessment with welding. It could be a situation where a student may need to change their classes based on that if they are a remote learner. Grading policy will be the same regardless of whether they are in person or remote. All grades will carry the same amount of weight and have the same expectations regardless of where the learning is taking place. Same with attendance. Talk a little bit about attendance. I'll do that in just a minute when I talk about synchronous and asynchronous learning. But attendance will be taken. Um, there is a requirement that students attend at least 90% of their classes to receive credit or be promoted. It's the same for remote learners as in person. There's some guidelines on that. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But you'll remember in the spring, we did not have to take attendance. So um, it's going to look very different, like I mentioned. Receiving and returning student work, if we have to close the district, this is important. TA guidelines state that sufficient time to resolve a public health concern while minimizing academic disruptions is 5 days. So what they say is that we can only close our campuses for up to 5 consecutive days. And what that means is that let's say we have an outbreak on a campus, we can shut our campus down, send everybody to remote learning, or send everybody home, but we can only do that for up to 5 days. Then we have to offer in person instruction for those students again. So if we were to close, it would be for no more than 5 consecutive days. Very similar to a bad weather day. It might be that we just shut the school down or the district down for a day or 2 days, depending on the situation. Uh, those are things that we haven't had to deal with as far as COVID-19 or a virus goes. But anyway, we we know that that may come up, and we may have to shut down school. There are two pathways. I've talked about these: in-person instruction. That means that student comes in person means that the students will return to the classroom on August the 24th. There are two types of at-home learning options. Synchronous instruction is our default instructional model. That is a model very similar to the Zoom meeting that we had last night, where it is a two-way real-time virtual instruction between students and teachers. The teacher is instructing all of the students in their classroom, while that student that is remote is watching them do that lesson. It is a live um, lesson between that teacher and all of the students in the classroom and the students that are at home that are doing synchronous instruction. So, generally speaking, when a teacher has a class or at a certain time of the day for the elementary, they take attendance. If a student is linked in through synchronous instruction, teacher takes the attendance for the classroom of those in person and those that are in the synchronous environment. Again, it's very much the same. If that teacher works through a lesson, assigns some work to do, that student that is in the virtual setting is required to do that and submit that through our learning management systems at that time, just as if they were sitting in the classroom. Um, I know it sounds a little overwhelming. Like I said, there will be some training on this, and there will be a learning curve on all of this. So please understand that it will take us some time to get all of our students trained, uh, and all of the parents just on all of the processes that we will have to go through. There are some expectations for students that are uh, completing the remote learning through the synchronous instructional model. They have to attend class on time for the class schedule. They have an Algebra 1 class that starts at 8:05. Then they need to be online and connected to that teacher's classroom at 8:05, just like all of the other students. They will need to dress appropriately. School dress code will apply because we can see them through the video. They need to be prepared and ready to learn during class, have a designated workspace free from distractions. Their face will need to be shown on the screen, and they need to participate as if they were in the classroom. Asynchronous instruction is a little bit different. It is not live or in person. This could be pre recorded lessons where the student completes the work on their own. All grade levels are eligible for this. This is the only model for pre-K to second grade. They will do the asynchronous model. Students not engaged in the daily lessons will be marked absent. Engaged is defined by TEA as progress in the district's learning management system, progress from teachers to student each day, and assignments turned in daily. The grading policy is consistent with those used for the synchronous and the in-person, and it's the same for all assessments and assignments. They will, even through the asynchronous model, teachers will address the same required curriculum as in-person and synchronous. So we will have to make sure that we do some training on this as well, so that those that might be doing asynchronous learning understand that for them to be counted present for the day, even from a virtual uh, setting, they have to be engaged, which means they have to turn in some work that day or be engaged with the teacher in some form or fashion. Excuse me. The student expectations for asynchronous: participate in daily virtual touch points with the teacher if requested, show proof of participation in a daily virtual instruction, um, communicate with the teacher when there's a need for additional assistance, and designate a workspace and work times at home. Again, I know this can be a little bit overwhelming and you may not understand this as a parent. We will provide guidance and we will answer questions if you have any questions. I'm running through this very quickly, but please understand that if you're not sure and you have any questions, we will get your questions answered one way or another. We do have enough devices to provide every student in our district with a Chromebook or some kind of device. There will be an agreement that goes along with that. Some extracurricular information. Um, we know that there are some students that might participate in extracurricular activities that are learning from a remote instructional model. And that's okay. They can still participate in any kind of extracurricular activity that we have, whether it be band athletics, music, cheer, ag, whatever it might be. But there will be some requirements. They may have to attend a class during that time. And so, anyway, students that participate remotely will still be eligible to participate in those activities. Pep rallies, we'll have to look at pep rallies. We may have to hold them outside, or we may not be able to have pep rallies. Um, Elementary PE and athletics, PE is required, and so we will provide some safety measures for those that are participating in that. So just a final thought. Um, I mean, exactly what it says here, based on the nature of this pandemic, odds are not in our favor for us to be completely COVID free as the new year gets underway. We will make the best effort that we possibly can to keep everybody safe. I can't stress that enough. As a leadership team, we have discussed many scenarios and how can we handle any different scenario that might come up. At every meeting that we have had, we have come up with different scenarios. We've talked our way through many of the scenarios and what can we do to keep our staff and our students safe when they are here. So please understand that we have put a lot of thought into this. We we are we are not experts by any means. We know that we're going to learn some things, but we're going to do everything that we can to keep everybody safe. We will have to make decisions when we do hear of a case or we do know of a student that may be exposed or a staff member. And again, we're no expert in that, but we've had those conversations. We've put ourselves in some of these scenarios and talked our way through what they might look like. So we are really doing our best to prepare, and we we know how important it is for our students to be safe when they are here. We know how important it is for you as a parent to feel good about your student being here. I can tell you, for me, I can't wait to see our kids again. You know, we're going to be going on more than 5 months of having any students around, and it's exciting to see some of the students that we already have here, and I just can't wait to get students back. But with that being said, we still know how important the safety is. We know there are no easy answers right now. Um, Much of what will happen will depend on the circumstances surrounding each case and the protocols that we have in place. Preparation is the key, and we have prepared a lot this summer. We feel like we are ready to go. I know that through this particular document, and I kind of talked in circles in a few places. This document is there for you to read. We will send this with this video. But again, I want to stress to you that if you have any questions whatsoever, you're still trying to make a decision about whether or not you want to send your student back or whether you want to keep them at home, anything that we can do to help you make that decision, we will do. My contact information is here. You can contact me via email. You can call me. I will get back to you as soon as possible. I know that there's a short period of time for you to make this commitment. Uh, you might be better reaching out to the campuses because they have maybe more specific protocols. I've kind of gone over some general things. Each campus is developing their protocols a little bit differently than the other campus. But I can promise you that any protocol they put in place, they're doing to try to keep our, our staff and students safe. So this is the Miss Walker and Miss Cooey's contact at the elementary school. These you can find these online um, if you need to. You also see Blanco Middle School. Mr. Kenny is the principal over there. His email address and phone number. We have a new high school principal, Mr. Henson, Patrick Henson. His email address is patrick.henson@blancoisd.org. You can call him there as well. Or, like I stated before, reach out to me. Please make sure that we answer your questions. We want this to be a great experience for you and your child. We know there are going to be some challenges along the way, but we have great kids in our district, and we have the best staff around that will do their best to make this a positive experience for all of us. So I thank you for your time. I apologize that we had to do this in this particular manner. Um, and I apologize that this video is a little bit lengthy. So I will go ahead and end it and just say that I appreciate your time. Reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you and have a great evening.